Hello, my name is John Didi, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local media political analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today I am talking with noted lobbyist Bruce Bereano. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Professor. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Glad to have you here. The first question I want to ask is, what led you in life to the path of a career as a lobbyist?
I'll give you a short version. It's not easy. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. My parents were very active politically, active in the sense that they always voted. They were precinct captains in our neighborhood. So I watched them doing what they were doing. And then in my senior year of high school, this gentleman in the synagogue, I'm of the Jewish faith, this gentleman in the synagogue that we went to every Friday night decided to run for the state legislature up in Albany in New York. And he asked my parents if I would be his campaign manager and run the storefront. In the old days, you had a campaign storefront with volunteers and stuffing envelopes and what have you. And he asked me, and I love people. I thought it was interesting, so I did it. And that got me very interested in politics. Started reading the New York Times every day, which I still do. And the other thing which really interested me in kind of politics and public service was John F. Kennedy became president of the United States. And he impacted me and a lot of people of my generation. Two things I had takeaways from President Kennedy, and one was public service was honorable and that a person could make a difference. So I decided, I knew I was going off to college. I decided to do political science as my major. When I came down to Washington, D.C. to go to George Washington University, which then and still does has a very strong government and political science department. And in reading the New York Times at that time, everybody in state and federal government went to law school. So I thought like a law school degree was like a union card into politics. So I decided I was going to go to law school as well. My senior year of undergraduate school, I worked up on Capitol Hill for Senator Robert Kennedy, the son of the president, who was very good friends with the state assemblyman that I helped get elected 3 years earlier. And I worked up on Capitol Hill and started interacting with the legislative process and with politics. And then did that my senior year of college. And then during the 3 years of my law school, I worked for United States Senator Joseph Tydings from the state of Maryland and continued working and learning the legislative process at the federal level, interacting with lobbyists, writing speeches, and learning about the government process.
What was it like working for Robert Kennedy and also working for Tydings? Because they were, Robert Kennedy was really a giant in that time, in that era in the 1960s, and Tydings was really a giant in Maryland politics.
Well, it was an extraordinary experience. I know now more so than I did then how grateful and appreciative I was in learning, watching, and observing, and developing my own abilities and skills on a personal level. Reading the New York Times throughout the presidency of John F. Kennedy, and of course, continuously, I read about all the people in his cabinet and all of his policies and what have you. And here I am 3.5, 4 years later. One of the duties I did was driving Senator Kennedy around. And sometimes some of the president's former cabinet would be in the car, and it would, I was a young guy. I mean, it just internally blew me away that I'm driving a car that former Defense Secretary Bob McNamara is in, or Kenny O'Donnell or Arthur Schlesinger, with the president's brother. I was calm and cool, but internally, my head was exploding. I couldn't believe what I was experiencing and how fortunate I was in just learning and listening, and that it was quite an experience. I was extremely fortunate in that regard.
like a kid in a candy store in many ways.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, everyone had different personalities. Obviously, Senator Kennedy and Senator Tydings had very different personalities, but they were both just giants and really took their jobs of serving the public and the people very seriously. I learned how to write speeches. I learned how to read and draft federal legislation. I attended a number of committee meetings and sessions and just watched the federal legislative process and interacted, communicating with lobbyists. So you learn a lot from watching and not just doing yourself. And so I was very fortunate in that regard, both doing and watching.
What is Tidings like?
Tydings was very warm and very friendly. He was a little more formal from the family that he came from. He was very passionate in the issues that he cared about, gun control and other issues. He, of course, he came out of a family himself with a long tradition of political and public service. His father, and he was quite a statesman, in my opinion.
You talked about before with JFK as far as the interest of public interest. Do you think it's changed a lot from that era? Do you think it's more like people wanting to get involved, maybe like Elon Musk, as far as the interest of self-interest?
Uh, yes, I agree. Very regretfully, at all levels of government, you are getting people running for office and holding office that are there for personal reasons and not public reasons. And it's unfortunate. I'm not trying to be naive, but what it does is the people are not, in my opinion, served as effectively in terms of representative government. Particularly state legislators are supposed to be representing a population. And maybe it's a social media. I don't know exactly what, but at all levels of government, not everybody. I am not saying that at all. There's some extraordinary people in public office today and in the recent past, but I've always believed that someone running for office and serving in office, particularly at a legislative level, but even at an executive level, they should be doing it for one reason only, and that's to serve the public and represent the people.
What are the keys to being a successful lobbyist? Because you've had a long and prominent career in Annapolis. What's the keys to really being successful in this profession?
Well, thank you very much. I let others evaluate my performance or my reputation. I don't do that myself, but thank you. A number of things, not in any particular order. Got to really like people because you are dealing with people and people's personalities and idiosyncrasies and habits and what have you. You've got to be willing to work very hard, very professionally. You have to develop and have a very strategic mind in planning and the order in which you do things. And as I said, being strategic and organized so that you can really talk and represent other people. You also have to, in my view, to be really ultimately effective, short and long term. You have to have a personality that not only likes people and enjoys the variety of personalities, but you've got to be 100% honest. You cannot lie. You can't fabricate. You can't exaggerate. You're only going to be as effective, in my view, as your personality is and your reputation for honesty. You have to do what you say and say what you do. I mean, it's all about relationships ultimately. You need to know the subject matter that you're dealing with that's either reflected in the piece of legislation or your client's views of position. But your effectiveness in terms of getting an elected official to believe you and maybe take your position and be on your side really depends upon relationships. And by relationships, I am not talking about political contributions or that kind of stuff. I'm talking about what I have found is that if public officials in dealing with a lobbyist really trust that lobbyist, know they're never going to be given bad information, they're never going to be lied to, and that they are constant, that makes them the most effective, because there's a lot of other activity that goes on in politics. I say kidding around to public officials. I don't know how I came up with this phrase, but I say, remember, there's the sun, there's the moon, and there's Bruce Bereano. And what I mean by that is that I do what I say what I do. I only ride one horse at a time, and if I'm on your side, don't even worry about me. I'm not going anywhere, and you don't have to check in. I'm just very constant, reliable. And these are, I'm not saying in a braggadocio fashion, these are traits and characteristics that are not as prominent and prevalent in lobbying and politics as they should be. So if you have them, you're going to be very effective.
Sounds like one of the most important elements in lobbying, besides an extreme large amount of knowledge about your client, the topic you're lobbying about, is the trust factor, and the trust between you and the legislator or whoever you're lobbying.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. Obviously, you have to know the subject matter that you are talking to a public official about. Either read the bill or the document or the regulation and know what you're talking about. But even if you do, if you're not trusted, in my view, in terms of relationship with the public official, the elected official, could be an administrator. It does not have to be an elected official. Could be someone who is a regulator or someone in a cabinet position that makes decisions. But it's all about relationships, and not just relationships, but relationships of trust and consistency and reliability.
I can definitely understand that, because you're meeting with so many different people, and of course, with the Maryland legislature of almost
188.
Yeah,
188.
188 with all those people. The amazing thing is you have to be able to know everybody on a first name basis and remember the little things about them.
Yes, yeah, and I agree with you, and that's why, for example, in Annapolis, in my view, lobbying is not just a 90-day experience. When the legislature's in session, it's year round. I mean, when the legislature's not in session, I spend time going around the state, meeting with legislators back in their districts, just visiting with them, keeping up with them, maintaining relationships, learning what's going on. I obviously attend events and fundraisers. I go to conferences and interact with legislators. It's a continuous process, and we're all human beings. We all like attention. We all do. I'm fortunate, sir. I love people. People's personalities just excite me. They really do. I mean, I know there's not time, and I'm not going to bore you with it, but I've dealt with.
You could bore me. I'm good with that.
I've dealt with some enormous personalities in my life. I've been very, very fortunate, and not just the pleasure of them, but you also learn from those personalities. You really, really do. And the one thing we control as a lobbyist, in particular, but even other ways, the one thing we control, and you can't make any excuses about, is our personality and our character. We totally control it. No one else does. Not even AI. And if you develop that, and you maintain that consistently, you're going to be very effective, because first of all, you're going to stand out. Unfortunately, I'll say this as politely as possible. Unfortunately, in the world of government and politics, a lot of times truth and trust are not as prevalent as they should be, or people are more transactional than being relationship driven, if you follow me.
Oh, yes.
So, but I also will say that I didn't realize it at the time, but law school, the 3 years of law school, were exceedingly beneficial to me. I remember my law professor in one of my first classes as a freshman told the class, I'm going to teach all of you how to stand on your feet and think and talk at the same time. And I'm looking at everybody, well, what's this all about, But it's absolutely true. So whether you're in a courtroom before a jury or a judge, you're a boardroom making a presentation, a committee providing testimony, or what have you, the ability to stand on your feet and think and talk at the same time, to be interrupted because the decision maker, be it a judge or a legislator, has a question and maybe wants to go in a different direction than you have written down on your presentation notes. You have to be able to quickly think and understand and redirect the conversation as the decision maker is asking and is interested in.
How did you get from working for legislators like Robert Kennedy and Tydings to starting the career as far as becoming a lobbyist?
Well, I've been extremely just fortunate. A lot of people have helped me along my way. Nobody gets anywhere by themselves. They really don't. As I said, I worked that campaign for my state assemblyman. And I started reading the New York Times. I got interested in politics, reading the New York Times every day and following very carefully the presidential administration. And then having the experience through my state assemblyman of working for Senator Kennedy. Interesting story. It's absolutely true. So he gets me the job in my senior year of college at George Washington University. And I knew it was just for my senior year that it was going to go from September to June, and that was it. So I go to Kennedy's office, I kind of check in, and the then administrative assistant, and I don't remember the person's name, politely but very directly said, well, you're not going to be working in the office because you don't go to Harvard or Yale. Only the Harvard and Yale people work in the office. You're going to do gopher work for the senator. So the gopher work was two things. Number one, going out to Hickory Hill and driving around the senator. Well, I got to know Ethel Kennedy. I saw all the White House memorabilia while I was waiting for the then senator, to get ready. The president's brother, the senator, knew my name. Good morning, Bruce. I mean, that blew me away. What am I, 21, 22 years old? And the brother of the former president of the United States says, hello, Bruce. And as I said earlier, I'm in the car with people from the president's cabinet. So I was very happy. I didn't go to Harvard or Yale, and that I really got those experiences of learning and everything like that. And then you watch. I would, on my off hours, I would sit in the gallery in the Senate, and I watched all the civil rights debates and various confirmations of various justices. And I was interested in politics and government, and you learn. I know I'm repeating it, but you just learn from watching. And then after that, once you're up on the Hill, you hear about things. And I heard there was an opening in Tydings' office. So I applied for it. I was interviewed, and they were kind enough to hire me. And that I did for 3 years. I wrote speeches. I worked on legislation. I had one of my dreams come true. I always wanted to sit next to the chairman of the committee during a congressional hearing. And I did that. Senator Tydings, may rest in peace, chaired a subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I sat next to him during a hearing, and inside I was just exploding, but I was, calm and cool. I couldn't believe what was going on. It's very fortunate, but I met people along the way. I did. When Tydings lost his election in '70, his re-election, and I was out of a job. I mean, I was fortunate to hear about a position out in Annapolis to work for a commission, which then Governor Mandel set up, of very prominent lawyers and judges in the state of Maryland to rewrite, not substantively, but organizationally, the code of the state of Maryland. It's not sexy, but it's very important if you want to easily find out areas of the law or what have you. You want a code that's organized and reads correctly without any obsolete information and stuff like that. So I worked on that, and I really honed my skills at bill drafting and rewriting. And there were members of that commission that were, as I said earlier, were the top lawyers and lobbyists, and not lobbyists, excuse me, top lawyers and judges in the state of Maryland, because they wanted this commission to have credibility in its work product. And the chairman of that commission, Governor Mandel, put as the president of the Senate, William James from Harford County. So I, of course, reported to him and worked for him. And after about a year and a half, almost 2 years working on the commission, sir, he asked me to come to his office in the State House. He wanted to talk to me. I got scared. I thought I did something wrong. He was going to fire me. But he asked me to be his administrative assistant and come work for him in the legislature. And I didn't ask what the salary was. I didn't care. I said yes. And that's how I got involved in working with the state legislature, 2 years for Senator James, before he then went on to become state treasurer. And then when Congressman Hoyer was a state senator and came in as president of the Maryland Senate, he kept me on for 4 years. So those 6 years working for the president of the Senate in a very substantive, very immersed way, I really learned about the legislature and state government in Maryland, the legislative process, and how to draft and write, and extraordinary experience, learning substantively and also relationship building.
Steny Hoyer like?
Well, I was with him yesterday, unfortunately, at a funeral. Steny Hoyer is an extraordinary human being. I love him very dearly. He was and still is the youngest Senate president in the history of the state of Maryland. He's about 6 months younger than Bill Ferguson when he came in to become Senate president. When Steny Hoyer became Senate president, at that time, and I'm not being critical at that time, that the composition of the Maryland Senate was, first of all, there was just one female legislator. She was elderly. And most of the senators had been there 20, 30, one or two of them 35, 40 years. And here's this young 26-year-old guy being president of the Senate. And he was so brilliant and astute to show them that he was smart, that he was hardworking, that he was articulate, and that he was extraordinarily respectful of them. And in my opinion, by the end of that first session, they all embraced him as the president of the Senate because he cared about the Senate. He maintained its stature and its quality, and the way he respected and dealt with them. He didn't push around or try to be cocky or anything with his power and his position. Quite to the contrary, he displayed, which he has through his entire life in the Senate and in Congress, an extraordinary ability to be collaborative and to bring people together and to work well with others, and very, very effective as a Senate president. And I know, having talked to congressmen over the many years, extremely effective across the aisle in the Congress of the United States. He's not about himself. He's always been very down to earth, never pushing around his power and stature and what have you. Good listener, keeps his word. He does what he says. He said what he does. He's retiring, the longest serving congressman in Maryland's history. And in a large way, he really was America's congressman. So we went to a funeral yesterday of one of his colleagues, former Senate President Mickey Steinberg, who came after Hoyer. And it was a Jewish service, and we were there. And the number of people of the Jewish faith that came up to him to thank him for all he has done consistently for the state of Israel and to fight anti-Semitism, and it was quite remarkable. But very down-to-earth guy, and just very real, and very reliable, very reliable.
One person you mentioned before that I think is a very underrated figure in Maryland political history, but did a lot, was Marvin Mandel. And what he did and you could add a little bit more to this as far as how he really reorganized state government and made things a lot better.
Not criticizing anyone else. There has never been, in my opinion, a governor as extraordinary as Marvin Mandel. I think he's been the best governor in the history of the state of Maryland. And I'll tell you why. When he was Speaker of the House, he commissioned at the Eagleton Institute up at Rutgers University. I think his name was Rosenthal, or a commission to study the structure of the state legislature when he's Speaker of the House. They came back and saw that it needed to be modernized. So what he did is he created a committee system based upon subject matters, got rid of about 30 or 40 committees that were all over the place and unruly. He created the Department of Fiscal Services, which is an arm of the state legislature, providing revenue and fiscal authority, providing legal advice, providing bill drafting, providing a library, all for the legislature. So he modernized the legislature while he was Speaker of the House. Then he moves on and becomes governor, and he modernizes the executive branch. He created, for the first time ever, the cabinet system in the state of Maryland. He created shock trauma. He created MAIF. He just brought Maryland government into the 20th century. And then also while he was governor, he created the judiciary. For example, he created the district court system, that they had to be judges. He created the intermediate appellate court, and he broadened the authority and the ability of the Court of Appeals, which is now the Supreme Court of Maryland. So throughout his career as a legislator, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, as speaker, and as governor, he modernized and affected all three branches of government. I mean, his creation of shock trauma was just extraordinary, which people take for granted, which is unique. There's no other situation in the United States like that. An extraordinary governor.
Another person I want to talk to about who was also extraordinary in my way, if I have to think of top three political figures of the last 100 years, it would be Mike Miller.
Nobody like Mike Miller. Mike Miller was an extraordinary president of the Senate. And I don't think anyone will ever be like Mike Miller. He was a profound historian, and not just knowledge-wise, but believed in the teachings of history and maintaining tradition and order. He was so extraordinarily strong on maintaining the stature and respect and dignity in a functional way of the Senate of Maryland. He exercised his power very adroitly, both in a humane way and in a way that people were somewhat fearful of him. And I don't say that in a negative way. If you have power, people have to know that you're willing to use it and you will use it. And he, in his own unique personality, and he had a very, very unique and different personality, he cared deeply. He cared deeply, not only in the institution of the Senate of Maryland, but in what he believed in and what he was working on and stuff like that. And he was just a brilliant, brilliant politician in knowing how to work with people and influence people as he wanted to get the various goals and objectives that he had in mind.
What about Casper Taylor?
Good man. Good man. May he rest in peace. Comes out of the hills and the coal mines and the mountains of Western Maryland. They all had different styles, but he was a very caring, a very effective chairman of a committee and Speaker of the House. And coming from his background, he really cared about people. He understood kind of regular common people, and reflected that and never forgot where he came from. In my opinion, I never saw where he kind of got his feet off the ground by the power and the stature that he had. And in my dealings with him, both as a chairman of a committee and a Speaker of the House, he was truthful, reliable, and just very sincere and very caring.
One person you talked about before that I think would have been a great governor, and that was Mickey Steinberg.
Yes, Mickey was just very bright. He never took himself seriously in terms of, I mean, he took himself seriously, but he never was egotistical or self-centered or what have you. He loved people. He made people comfortable. He made people believe in him. He had such a gregarious and funny and incredibly humorous personality, but everyone knew he was very bright and very sharp and very effective. And he was Senate president, and then went on to become lieutenant governor, and just a very strong and very dynamic personality. And he brought people together, all races and religions, and exemplified treating people in a very polite and real human way.
You talked about dynamic personalities, and the person I think of, because I moved to Maryland in 1991, was William Donald Schaefer.
Again, I'm not bragging. All these people you mentioned, I've known so well, so closely, and so intimately. And that, before I answer you, it's why I said earlier, I'm just so fortunate that I knew so many people with extraordinary personalities, and learning from them and watching them. I got to know William Donald Schaefer when he was mayor. He worked very hard in his campaign and worked very closely with him when he was governor. He had a unique, is the most polite way of saying it, personality. Very quirky, very, 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 very unusual personality. But it was that personality that God gave him that made him such an extraordinary mayor of Baltimore for 4 terms, 12 years, and a good governor. And it was just his style and his way of doing things. Everyone knew he really meant what was best. It was nothing about himself. But like when he was mayor and he'd call up the public works director and say, I just saw an abandoned car in an alleyway in Baltimore City. And if that car is not removed and gone by the end of the day, you're going to be removed and gone by the end of the day, and then hang up the phone deliberately, not telling him where the car was. So it frightened the guy, and he removed about 5 or 6 cards to make sure he got the right one. And that's what Schaefer wanted. And that's why he deliberately did not tell him where the car was. And he was stimulating him. He wasn't being ugly and a bully, and it's just his manner of doing things, because he cared. Baltimore City he won his election as governor because at that time, so many people around the state of Maryland came to Baltimore City. They felt extraordinarily safe. It was beautifully clean. It was vibrant. And his theme was, as governor, I will do for the state of Maryland as I did for Baltimore City. And he did. So the quirkiness, and I say that not just politely, but really complimentarily, of his personality made him such an effective leader, because he meant what he said. He was not just joking around, but he was not being mean or nasty. He wanted to get things done for the betterment of everybody.
What about Harry Hughes as governor?
Let me see how I can put this. He was very distinguished. He had a lot of knowledge from coming out of the state Senate. He looked like a governor. He was not as demonstrative or involved as a governor as other governors. I would just leave it at that.
That's fine. We're almost out of time a little bit. Let me ask
I'm
this.
sorry.
Is there any political figures that I've kind of omitted or people in Maryland political history during your lifetime that really stand out that maybe people should know a lot more about?
Larry Hogan Jr., very
Okay.
close to a friend of mine. I thought, and I'm Democrat, but I'm for the best person, not what the party says. Larry Hogan, I think, was an extraordinary governor for 8 years. He cared. He cared about people. He got us through COVID. He got us to when he was having a personal crisis of cancer and did not let that deter him from governing. He handled the Baltimore City riots extraordinarily in a very effective, very safe, caring way. He had obstacles because, he was a Republican and it was Democratic, but so many people, his popularity remains so high even today because people thought and believed he was real. He cared about people, not about himself. Very, very popular. And he will go down, in my opinion, along with other governors, as one of the most popular governors in Maryland's recent history. Another gentleman who unfortunately just served one term was Bob Ehrlich, Governor Ehrlich. It was just very enthusiastic, cared about the state of Maryland. He and the First Lady, they were of another political party, but both of them really did their very best to really govern and care about all the people throughout the entire state, and not just the middle corridor from Harford County down. So we've been fortunate. We've had a number of very good governors from both parties. We really have.